Welcome everyone to the Lofi Poli Sci podcast. I'm your host, Michael Pickering, and that's right, Lo-Fi's and low fidelity, low quality, in your face, messy as can be global news show. Here we're going to talk about that famous question, what's going on in the world today? We'll be covering 5 headlines from across the globe, and then choose one to go into a more detailed analysis. The news, fresh off the press. Source, BBC News, World Section, Subsection, Latin America. U.S. sends warships to the Caribbean to stop illegal drugs. The country is collaborating with 22 other countries in this effort, sending a variety of aircraft and battleships to impede drug smuggling into the country. The implications. The war on drugs is nothing new. Since drugs were around, countries have been trying to stop the flow of illicit materials. Unless, of course, countries are profiting from them. The simple fact. Traditionally, one-nation wars on drugs have been hampered due to the cartels and organized crimes having a seemingly unlimited amount of cash to find new and innovative ways to slip in and out of the countries with their contraband. The question to Lo-Fi Poli Sci students, will the collaboration of 23 countries be enough to turn the tides of the war on drugs? Write in and let me know your thoughts. Next up, source, Reporters Without Borders. Orban's Orwellian law paves way for information police state. In Hungary, the new law in question allows the Prime Minister to rule by decree on whether news is fake or not, and can pass a sentence of up to 5 years for the dissemination of false information. The implications. This puts a great deal of power into the regulation of media in a country directly into the hands of the executive branch. In the past few years, we've seen several countries across the globe enacting such laws in an effort to curb government criticism. The idea is that journalists and media organizations will begin self-censoring themselves in fear of heavy-handed government responses, rather than the government having to act after critical news has been published. We patiently wait to see if the high courts in the country will uphold this law or rule it unconstitutional. A side note, most countries we see pass such laws are authoritarian regimes, not democracies like Hungary. Our following story is an update to a report given yesterday by Amnesty International. U.S. military pledges to report publicly on civilian casualties in Somalia. Yesterday's news piece brought forth the issue of drone strikes taking the lives of innocent people across the globe. The U.S. Africa Command, as reported by Amnesty International, has stated that by the end of April, they will begin providing information on the loss of civilian life from drone strikes in Africa. The implications. In democratic countries across the globe, media act as the fourth estate, an additional check on political power. Governments responding to these checks are a positive sign that even in hard times, democracy can survive, and reporting on what's going on in the world today matters. And now for our headline in the Spotlight segment. Source, Reuters. Section, World News. Top EU court says eastern states broke law by refusing to host refugees. The European Court of Justice handed down the decision that the Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland had all broken European law by not taking some of the responsibility of humanitarian actions as it concerns the housing of refugees that arrived in Italy and Greece en masse during the past several years. The background and implications of this story. The European Union is a voluntary organization of states. However, once joined, countries must abide by European law or face penalties. The question for students of Lo-Fi Poli Sci, what kind of penalties might these countries face for breaking the law? Can the European Union, at this moment, enforce such laws? This represents a true test of strength of the EU, and the strength of its dedication to democracy and human rights. Write in and let me know your thoughts. And a last piece of news from the BBC Science. Dinosaurs walked through Antarctic rainforest. That's right, folks. It wasn't always ice and penguins down in Antarctica. A brief side note. Penguins live in Antarctica, which is in the south. Polar bears live in the Arctic, which is in the north. Another brief side note. North and south do not mean up and down, which is arbitrary depending on where you're standing in space. And yes, we are all technically standing in space. While taking core samples in Antarctica, scientists identified 90-million-year-old remains of rainforest on the continent. And before you ask, Lo-Fi students, the scientists answered, dinosaur fossils have been found on the outer edges of the continent before. The implications. This find furthers the understanding that the Earth, over 4.5 billion years old, is ever-changing and growing, as too is our understanding of it. As the planet grows and changes, so too do we as a species. The more we learn from the Earth, perhaps the more we can learn from each other, and continue to grow on a positive path in the cosmos. And that's a brief snapshot of what's going on in the world today. Let me say thank you so much for listening. Stay safe, wash those hands, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Lo-Fi Poli Sci podcast. Pickering, signing off.